I'm Glenda 32, and I never imagined I'd be sitting in a courtroom listening to my own parents demand that I financially support the child my ex-husband had with my sister. The betrayal was one thing, but this was something else entirely. As I sat there watching my mother cry on the witness stand, painting me as the villain in a story where I was actually the victim, I knew I had one chance to set the record straight. Before I tell you what happened, when I finally stood up and spoke, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe because what I revealed in that courtroom turned my entire family against themselves, and you won't believe how this story ends. Let me take you back to when life was simple. 8 years ago, I married Travis in a small ceremony overlooking the Columbia River. We met during our junior year at the University of Oregon. He was studying architecture, I was in graphic design. Travis had this quiet confidence about him, the kind that made you feel safe without him having to say a word. He'd bring me coffee during late-night study sessions, always remembered how I liked it. 2 sugars, extra cream. Those small gestures mattered. After graduation, we moved to Portland and bought a modest 2-bedroom house in the Selwood neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. The mortgage was manageable, and we both had decent jobs. Travis worked at a mid-sized architecture firm downtown, and I landed a position at a creative agency doing brand design. Our life had a rhythm to it. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, Sunday hikes in Forest Park, evenings cooking together in our tiny kitchen, trying new recipes, and usually failing but laughing through it anyway. We talked about having kids. We'd already painted what would become the nursery, a soft yellow gender neutral, ready for whenever the time felt right. I'd catch Travis sometimes standing in that empty room, and I knew he was imagining the same future I was. A family. Our family. Everything felt like it was falling into place. My relationship with my family was complicated, but I thought it was normal complicated. I'm the oldest of 2 daughters. My sister Melissa is 4 years younger than me, and she's always been the baby of the family in every sense of the word. Growing up, I watched my parents bend over backward for her. When Melissa wanted to go to a private college, they paid full tuition. When I went to university, I took out student loans because there wasn't enough money for both of us, they said. When Melissa crashed her car junior year, Dad bought her a new one. When I needed a car, I worked 2 jobs and bought a used Honda Civic. I wasn't bitter about it. Really, I wasn't. I'd accepted my role as the responsible one, the one who didn't need as much attention. My parents, Robert and Linda Harrington, lived in Seattle, about a 3-hour drive north of Portland. We'd make the trip once a month for family dinners. Melissa would usually be there too, full of stories about her latest adventure or short-lived job. She'd worked as a yoga instructor, a boutique sales associate, a social media manager for a startup that folded after 6 months. Nothing ever seemed to stick. But we got along fine, or so I thought. She was my little sister. I loved her. Travis seemed to like her too, which I appreciated. He'd ask about her life, give her advice about job hunting, treated her like the family she was. When Melissa showed up at our door one rainy March evening, 2 years into our marriage, mascara running down her face, saying she'd just been let go from her latest job and her roommate was kicking her out. Of course we let her stay. It was supposed to be temporary. 2 weeks, maybe 3, just until she found something new. Travis set up the guest room for her while I made tea and listened to her cry about how unfair everything was. I felt protective of her in that moment. She seemed so lost, so fragile. I wanted to help. The first few weeks were actually nice. Melissa would cook dinner on nights when I had to work late, which was often because we'd just landed a major client and I was pulling 12-hour days. I'd come home to the smell of pasta or stir fry, and Travis and Melissa would be laughing about something at the kitchen table. I was grateful. My husband was being kind to my sister. My sister was helping out around the house. It felt like family. Travis took it upon himself to help Melissa update her resume, practice interview questions, connect her with people in his network. He spent hours with her going over her portfolio, suggesting improvements. I thought it was sweet. I thought he was just being a good brother-in-law. Every evening, they'd sit in the living room with laptops open, working on applications, while I finished up work emails in the bedroom. Sometimes I'd hear them laughing, and I'd smile to myself. At least someone could make Melissa feel better about her situation. I should have seen it. Looking back, the signs were there. The way Travis started doing his laundry separately. How Melissa always seemed to have fresh flowers in her room, the kind I'd mentioned I liked, but we could never afford regularly. The inside jokes I wasn't part of. But I was too busy, too trusting, too convinced that my family was exactly what it appeared to be. We started seriously planning for a baby around that time. I went off birth control. We talked about names. Travis seemed excited about it, or at least he said he was. We'd lie in bed at night and talk about what kind of parents we'd be, what we'd teach our kids, how we'd make sure they felt loved. I had this image in my mind of Melissa being the cool aunt taking our future children on adventures, spoiling them the way aunts do. The whole picture felt complete. I really believed we were happy. I believed Travis when he kissed me goodbye in the mornings. I believed Melissa when she thanked us for letting her stay. I believed my parents when they said how lucky Melissa was to have such a generous sister. I believed all of it because why wouldn't I? These were the people who were supposed to love me most in the world. But then came the night that shattered everything. It was a Thursday in late September. I remember because it was unseasonably warm, one of those last gasps of summer before Portland's long rainy season sets in. I'd been at the office preparing for a big presentation scheduled for the next morning. Around 7:30, my creative director called to say the client had pushed the meeting back a week. Just like that, I had the evening free. I texted Travis to let him know I was coming home early, but he didn't respond. Not unusual. He often put his phone on silent when he was focused on work. I stopped at New Seasons on the way home and grabbed ingredients for Travis's favorite meal, thinking I'd surprise him. Steaks, fresh green beans, the good butter he liked. I was actually excited imagining his face when I walked in. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway at 8:15. Travis's truck was there parked in its usual spot. Melissa's car too. But no lights on downstairs, which was strange. I gathered the grocery bags and let myself in through the front door. The living room was empty. Kitchen too. No note, no indication of where anyone was. Then I heard it. A sound from upstairs. Not loud, but distinct. My stomach tightened in a way I didn't understand yet. I set the groceries on the counter, my hands moving slowly like I was underwater. Every instinct told me to turn around to leave to not go up those stairs. But I did anyway. One foot in front of the other each step on our creaky staircase, announcing my presence to anyone who might be listening. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Light spilled out into the hallway. I pushed it open. I don't know what I expected to see, but it wasn't that. It wasn't my husband and my sister in our bed in the bed where Travis and I had talked about baby names just 3 nights before. For a second, maybe two, nobody moved. We all just froze in this horrible tableau. Then Melissa screamed. Travis scrambled up, grabbing for his clothes, and I just stood there, gripping the doorframe, unable to form words. Glenda, Travis's voice cracked. This isn't what it looks like. But it was exactly what it looked like. There was no other explanation, no innocent reason they could give. I turned and walked back down the stairs, moving on autopilot. Behind me, I heard Travis calling my name, heard the thump of feet hitting the floor, the rustle of clothes being pulled on. I made it to the front door before he caught up to me. Please. He grabbed my arm. I jerked away like his touch burned. Please let me explain. Explain what? My voice came out flat, emotionless. I was in shock, I realize now. My brain couldn't process what I'd just seen. Explain how you've been sleeping with my sister under my roof. Melissa appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapped in our bedsheet. Our bedsheet. She was crying, but I felt nothing looking at her. No anger yet. No pain. Just this vast, echoing emptiness. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. We didn't mean for it to happen. That's when the anger came, hot and sudden, flooding through me. You didn't mean for it to happen. What does that even mean, Melissa? You accidentally ended up in bed with my husband. She flinched. Travis stepped between us. Don't yell at her. This is my fault. Oh, it's both your faults. I grabbed my purse and keys. I'm leaving. I need to think. Where are you going? Travis asked. Anywhere that's not here. I drove for hours that night, no destination in mind. I ended up at my friend Kate's apartment in Northwest Portland around midnight. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside without questions. I told her everything, the words tumbling out between sobs I couldn't control. Kate held me while I cried, brought me water and tissues, let me stay in her spare room. I didn't sleep. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. I kept trying to piece together a timeline. How long had this been going on? Weeks, months. Had it started before Melissa moved in? Was that why she'd really come to Portland because of him? My mind spun in circles, each thought worse than the last. My phone buzzed constantly, texts from Travis, dozens of them. "I'm sorry, please come home. It was a mistake. Let me explain. I love you." Each message made me feel sicker. Melissa texted too, her messages full of excuses. We were both vulnerable. It just happened. I never wanted to hurt you. Please forgive me. But the worst part, the part that made me feel truly alone, was that I knew I'd have to tell my parents. And somewhere deep down, I already knew how they'd react. The next morning, I went back to the house while Travis was at work. Melissa was there sitting at the kitchen table like she had every right to be. I told her to pack her things and be gone by the end of the day. She started to argue to plead, but I cut her off. "You have 2 hours. If you're not out, I'm calling the police and having you removed for trespassing." She left. Travis came home that evening and found me in the living room still wearing yesterday's clothes, staring at nothing. He sat across from me looking wrecked and admitted everything. It had been going on for 4 months. 4 months of lies of betrayal happening right under my nose while I worked late and trusted them both. He begged for forgiveness, for a chance to explain, to make it right. But there was no making this right. I told him I needed space to think, to figure out what I wanted to do. He agreed to sleep in the guest room. We moved around the house like ghosts for the next week, barely speaking, the weight of what happened crushing both of us. I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks after I discovered the affair, I finally called my mother. I'd been putting it off, dreading the conversation, but I couldn't avoid it anymore. I needed support. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, that what happened was as terrible as it felt. Mom answered on the second ring, cheerful as always. "Glenda, how are you, honey?" I didn't bother with small talk. "Travis and Melissa had an affair." Silence. Then, "What do you mean?" I explained everything. The night I came home early. What I'd found. How long it had been going on. I waited for her shock, her outrage, her maternal instinct to protect her hurt daughter. Instead, I got a sigh. "Oh, Glenda, are you sure you're not overreacting?" I actually pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it, certain I'd misheard. "Overreacting, Mom? I caught them in my bed." "I know, sweetie, but these things happen in marriages. Maybe you two were having problems. Maybe Travis felt neglected." "So it's my fault." My voice rose. "I worked too much, so he had to sleep with my sister." "I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying marriages are complicated. Maybe you should consider counseling. Think about what you might lose if you just throw everything away." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I called my father next, hoping for better. Dad had always been the rational one, the one who'd mediate when Mom got too emotional. He listened to my story without interrupting. "That's unfortunate," he said when I finished. "But your mother's right. These things happen. You need to forgive and move forward. Travis is a good man. Don't let one mistake ruin your marriage." "One mistake, Dad. It went on for 4 months. Still, he's family now, and Melissa is your sister. You can't just cut them out of your life." I hung up feeling more alone than ever. My own parents were taking their side, or at the very least minimizing what they'd done. I tried to convince myself they just didn't understand, that once they had time to process it, they'd come around. Then 3 weeks later, Melissa called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "I'm pregnant," she said without preamble. "It's Travis's." The world tilted. I sat down hard on the couch, phone pressed to my ear, unable to form words. She kept talking, her voice shaking. She didn't know what to do. She was scared. She couldn't do this alone. I ended the call without responding and immediately called Travis. "Is it true?" I asked when he answered. He didn't have to ask what I meant. "Yes, she just told me this morning." "How far along?" 2 months, she thinks." I did the math. That meant she got pregnant while living in my house, maybe even in my guest bed. The betrayal kept getting deeper, finding new levels of pain I didn't know existed. I told Travis I was filing for divorce. He didn't fight me. What could he say? But my parents' reaction to Melissa's pregnancy was what broke me completely. Mom called the next day, her voice bright with forced cheer. Have you heard the news? You're going to be an aunt. An aunt. I repeated the words, disbelieving. Mom, that baby is the product of my husband cheating on me with my sister. That baby is innocent, Glenda, and Melissa needs support right now. She's terrified. What about me? I'm the one who got betrayed. Where's my support? You're stronger than Melissa. You always have been. You can handle this. Melissa is fragile. She needs us now. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask when I stopped mattering to them. Instead, I said, I need you too, Mom. And we love you, sweetie, but right now Melissa needs us more. Try to understand. I couldn't understand. Over the next few weeks, I watched my parents rally around Melissa. They drove down from Seattle to take her to doctor appointments. They posted on Facebook about becoming grandparents with pictures of ultrasound images and hashtags about blessings. They never once asked how I was doing. When I mentioned this to Dad, his response was sharp. You're being selfish, Glenda. This isn't about you anymore. That baby deserves a family. I'm your family too, I said quietly. Then act like it. Support your sister instead of making this all about your hurt feelings. I stopped calling, stopped answering their messages. I hired a lawyer, a woman named Patricia Morrison, who specialized in family law. She was professional and kind and didn't judge me when I cried in her office. The divorce proceedings moved surprisingly fast. Travis didn't contest anything. We sold the house and split the proceeds. I didn't ask for alimony or spousal support. I just wanted out, wanted to be free of all of it. I moved to a small one-bedroom apartment in the Pearl District on the 20th floor of a newer building. It had floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city, but it felt empty. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects, staying late at the office, because going home meant being alone with my thoughts. I stopped eating regularly, lost 15 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. My friends worried, but I insisted I was fine. The divorce was finalized 6 months after I filed. The same week, Melissa gave birth to a baby girl. Mom sent me a text with a picture. She's beautiful. Her name is Sophie. Name. I stared at that photo for a long time, at this tiny person who existed because of my pain. Then I deleted the message and blocked my mother's number. I blocked Melissa too. And Travis. I couldn't heal while they kept reopening the wound. Life settled into a new normal. Lonely but peaceful. I got promoted at work, made new friends who didn't know my history, started therapy to process the trauma. Slowly, incrementally, I began to feel like myself again. Not the same self I'd been before, but a new version, stronger maybe, more cautious certainly. I thought I'd closed that chapter of my life. I thought the worst was behind me. Then 8 months later, I received a court summons. The envelope was thin, official-looking, with the Multnomah County Circuit Court seal in the corner. I opened it, standing in my apartment lobby, still in my work clothes, and read the contents 3 times before I could process what I was seeing. My parents, Robert and Linda Harrington, were suing me, not for money damages or property disputes. They were petitioning the court to order me to provide financial support for Sophie Melissa's daughter, the daughter my ex-husband had fathered with my sister. They wanted me to pay $1,500 per month until the child turned 18. I sat down right there on the lobby floor, the papers scattered around me. The legal language was dense, but the argument was clear. Travis had lost his job and wasn't paying child support. Melissa was unemployed and unable to care for the baby financially. My parents, both retired on fixed incomes, had depleted their savings helping Melissa. I was the only family member with a stable income and the means to help. Therefore, the petition argued I had a moral and familial obligation to support the child. A neighbor asked if I was okay. I couldn't answer. I just gathered the papers and went up to my apartment, then immediately called Patricia Morrison. She answered even though it was past 7 on a Friday evening. They can't do this, I said after explaining. Can they? Patricia was quiet for a moment. It's unusual but not impossible. There's precedent in some states for extended family being required to support relatives in need. Oregon law is murky on this. We'll need to fight it, but Glenda, I need you to understand this will get ugly. It's already ugly. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Your parents will paint you as the villain. They'll make this about an innocent child in need. Are you prepared for that? I thought about everything I'd already been through. The betrayal, the isolation, the slow, painful process of rebuilding my life. I don't have a choice. I'm not paying for their mistakes. We spent the next 3 weeks preparing. Patricia was thorough requesting financial documents from Travis, Melissa, and my parents. What we found was illuminating. Travis hadn't lost his job in the traditional sense. He'd quit his position at the architecture firm and started freelancing. His income had actually increased, but he was hiding it, reporting only a fraction of what he made to avoid child support obligations. Melissa's social media told another story entirely. Instagram posts showed her at expensive restaurants wearing new clothes, taking weekend trips to wine country. Her captions were full of hashtags about single motherhood and struggle, but the images showed someone who clearly had access to money. As for my parents, they had indeed sold their house in Seattle, but not because they'd run out of money. They downsized to a smaller condo and put the profit toward a trust fund for Sophie. They were choosing to support Melissa financially, then claiming poverty to make me pay for that choice. Patricia built our case methodically. Character witnesses who could attest to my parents' favoritism toward Melissa. Financial experts to analyze Travis's real income. Screenshots of Melissa's social media contradicting her claims of hardship. We were as ready as we could be. The court date was set for November 16th, a cold gray Tuesday that felt appropriate for what was about to happen. I put on a navy suit, pulled my hair back, and tried to steady my nerves. Kate offered to come with me, but I told her no. This was something I needed to face alone. Patricia met me outside the courthouse. Remember, stay calm. Don't let them provoke you. We'll get our chance to speak. We entered the courtroom. It was smaller than I'd imagined, wood-paneled and formal. My parents were already seated on the other side, with their lawyer, a stern-looking man in his 50s named Gerald Caldwell, and there was Melissa holding Sophie. The baby was 3 months old, chubby-cheeked, and oblivious to the drama surrounding her existence. I didn't let myself look at them for long. I focused on the judge's bench, empty for now, and tried to breathe evenly. Travis wasn't there. I'd wondered if he'd show up, but apparently he was content to let everyone else fight over his responsibilities. Judge Elizabeth Patterson entered, and we all stood. She was in her early 60s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. We sat, and the proceedings began. Gerald Caldwell went first, laying out his case with practiced ease. Melissa was a single mother struggling to make ends meet. The father had abandoned his financial responsibilities. The grandparents had sacrificed their retirement security to help. I, meanwhile, had a successful career and substantial income. The child was innocent and deserved support. Family, he argued, meant taking care of each other. Then came the testimony. My mother took the stand first, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She talked about how hard Melissa's life had become, how the baby needed so much, how they'd spent all their savings trying to help. She painted a picture of a struggling young mother and her supportive parents doing their best in impossible circumstances. "And what about Glenda?" Caldwell asked. "What's her relationship with the family?" Mom's expression hardened. "Glenda has chosen to distance herself from us. She's angry about what happened between Travis and Melissa, which I understand, but she's taken that anger too far. She's abandoned her sister in her time of need." I gripped the armrest of my chair. Patricia touched my hand, a reminder to stay calm. My father testified next. His story was simpler, more direct. I'd always been the independent one, the one who didn't need help. Melissa had always needed more support. That's just how it was. Now Melissa needed support for Sophie, and I had the means to provide it. It was my duty as family. "Has Glenda ever indicated she's unwilling to help?" Caldwell asked. "She's refused all contact with Melissa and the baby," Dad said. "She won't even meet her niece." Then it was Melissa's turn. She carried Sophie to the witness stand, and I had to hand it to her. She played the part perfectly. Young, overwhelmed single mother. She talked about her pregnancy, how scared she'd been, how Travis had promised to support her and then disappeared. She cried, describing how hard it was to care for a newborn alone, how she couldn't afford diapers and formula without Mom and Dad's help. "Why do you think Glenda should help support Sophie?" Caldwell asked. Melissa looked right at me. "Because she's family. I know I made a terrible mistake. I hurt my sister, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But Sophie didn't do anything wrong. She deserves to have family who care about her. Glenda has the means to help. I don't understand why she won't. Judge Patterson had been listening carefully, occasionally taking notes. When Melissa stepped down, the judge looked at me thoughtfully. I couldn't read her expression. Was she sympathetic to their case? Did she see me as the villain they were painting? Then it was my turn to speak. Patricia called me to the stand. I walked up on shaking legs, was sworn in, and sat down. The courtroom felt very small. Suddenly everyone's eyes on me. I'd rehearsed what I wanted to say, but now facing my family across the room, the words felt inadequate. Ms. Harrington, Patricia began using my maiden name, which I'd reclaimed after the divorce. Can you tell the court about your relationship with your family growing up? I took a breath and started at the beginning. I told them about being the oldest child, the responsible one, about working 2 jobs to pay for college while my parents paid Melissa's tuition in full, about buying my own car while Melissa got one as a gift. I didn't say it with anger, just stated the facts as they were. This favoritism, was it something you resented? Patricia asked. No, I said honestly. I accepted it. I thought that's just how families were. Some kids need more support than others. I was okay being the one who didn't need as much. Tell us about your marriage to Travis. So I did. I described meeting him, falling in love, building a life together, our plans for children, our stable, happy marriage. Then I described Melissa asking to stay with us and how I'd welcomed her without hesitation. When did you discover the affair? I recounted that night in detail, coming home early, finding them together, the feeling of my entire world collapsing. Several people in the courtroom shifted uncomfortably. Melissa was crying again, but this time it felt different, less sympathetic. What was your family's reaction when you told them? This was the part that mattered. I pulled out my phone and read directly from the text messages I'd saved. My mother saying I was overreacting. My father calling me selfish. The lack of support, the dismissal of my pain, the immediate rallying around Melissa. Your Honor, I said, looking at Judge Patterson. I want to be clear about something. This isn't about me being vindictive or punishing my sister. This is about the fact that my family made a choice. When Melissa betrayed me in the worst possible way, when my husband violated our marriage vows under my own roof, my parents chose her side. They told me I was being dramatic. They told me to forgive and forget. They prioritized her feelings over mine. Patricia nodded. And when Melissa became pregnant, they celebrated. They posted about it on social media, talked about how blessed they were to be grandparents. They never once acknowledged that this baby was the product of an affair that destroyed my marriage. They never once asked if I was okay. I could see my mother's face crumpling, but I wasn't done. Ms. Harrington, the petitioners claim financial hardship. What did your investigation reveal? Patricia handed me a folder. I opened it and began presenting the evidence we'd gathered. Bank statements showing Travis's freelance income substantially higher than what he'd reported. Screenshots of Melissa's Instagram showing expensive meals, new clothes, weekend getaways. A copy of the real estate transaction showing my parents had cleared over $300,000 from selling their Seattle house. They're not broke, I said. They made choices. They chose to sell their house and use the money for Melissa. They chose to let Travis hide his income. They chose to enable my sister's lifestyle while she claims poverty. And now they're asking me to fund those choices. Why do you think they're doing this? I looked at my parents. Because it's always been this way. Melissa needs something and everyone else has to provide it. I've been doing it my whole life, putting her needs before mine. But this is a step too far. Patricia presented more evidence. Emails from my mother demanding I step up and help family. Text messages from Melissa alternating between apologies and accusations. A pattern of manipulation and entitlement that had defined our family dynamic for years. Ms. Harrington, in your own words, why shouldn't you be required to support Sophie? I looked at the baby still in Melissa's arms. She really was innocent in all this, but that didn't change the facts. Because Sophie has a father who's alive and capable of working. Because Melissa is a healthy adult who can get a job. Because my parents made financial decisions based on what they wanted to do, not what they could afford. And because I don't owe them anything. I've already paid the price for their choices. I lost my husband, my marriage, my family, my peace of mind. Peace. I spent months in therapy learning how to trust again. I rebuilt my entire life from nothing. And now they want me to fund the evidence of my betrayal to pay for the child that represents the worst moment of my life. My voice was shaking now, but I kept going. I forgive Melissa for what she did. I really do. Not for her, but for myself, because I couldn't carry that anger anymore. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to sacrifice myself for her mistakes. It doesn't mean I have to set myself on fire to keep her warm. I looked at Judge Patterson. Your Honor, I'm not a cruel person. I don't hate that baby. But I'm not her parent. I'm not responsible for the choices two adults made that brought her into this world. Travis needs to support his daughter. Melissa needs to find work. My parents need to accept the consequences of enabling this situation. But me, I've suffered enough for their mistakes. Patricia introduced our final piece of evidence, a statement from my therapist about the psychological impact of what I'd been through. Then she rested our case. The courtroom was completely silent. I stepped down from the witness stand and returned to my seat. I didn't look at my family. I couldn't. Gerald Caldwell tried to rebut to paint me as bitter and vengeful, but the evidence was clear. Judge Patterson called for a short recess, and we all waited while she reviewed the materials. When she returned, her expression was severe. I've heard enough, Judge Patterson said. This is not a case of family support. This is a case of enabling destructive behavior and attempting to force an innocent party to fund it. She looked at my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, I understand you love both your daughters, but love doesn't mean shielding someone from the consequences of their actions. Your daughter Melissa engaged in an affair with her sister's husband. That was her choice. The child that resulted from that affair is her responsibility and the father's responsibility. She turned to Melissa. Ms. Melissa Harrington, you're an adult. Your child has a living father who, according to the evidence presented, is more than capable of providing support. The fact that he's avoiding that responsibility is a matter for a different petition. Then she looked at me, and her expression softened slightly. Ms. Glenda Harrington, I want to commend you for your honesty today. What you've been through is unconscionable. You have no legal obligation to support this child, and frankly, I find it disturbing that your family would ask this of you. She picked up her gavel. The petition is denied. Mr. Travis Coleman will be subpoenaed to appear in family court to establish proper child support. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. It was over. I sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. I'd won. Judge Patterson's words echoed in my head. No legal obligation. Disturbing that they'd ask. I felt Patricia's hand on my shoulder, heard her quiet, "Well done," but I was watching my family across the aisle. My mother was sobbing into my father's shoulder. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour. Melissa sat motionless, still holding Sophie, staring at the floor. None of them looked at me. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe seeing what they'd put me through, laid out in legal documents and testimony, finally made it real for them. I stood up, gathered my things, and walked toward the exit. As I passed their row, my mother looked up. Our eyes met. I saw regret there finally, recognition of what they'd done. She opened her mouth to say something, but I shook my head and kept walking. Outside the courthouse, the November air was crisp and cold. Kate was waiting on the steps, even though I told her not to come. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. I didn't cry. I felt too empty for tears, but also lighter somehow. Like I'd been carrying a weight I hadn't realized was there, and now it was gone. How'd it go? Kate asked. I won. Of course you did. Want to get coffee? We went to a small cafe downtown. Kate didn't press for details, just sat with me while I processed. My phone buzzed several times. Texts from unknown numbers, probably my parents trying to reach me from new phones since I'd blocked their old ones. I didn't read them. Whatever they had to say, I didn't need to hear it. Over the next few days, word spread. Mutual friends reached out, some supportive, some critical. A few people told me I'd been too harsh, that blood is thicker than water, that I should have helped for the baby's sake. I learned to let those comments roll off me. The people who mattered understood. The court followed through on Judge Patterson's order. Travis was summoned and required to provide accurate financial statements. Turned out he'd been making nearly six figures from his freelance work. The judge ordered him to pay $800 a month in child support, retroactive to Sophie's birth. Melissa would have to get a job to cover the rest. My parents would have to live with the choices they'd made. I heard through Kate, who heard through a mutual friend, that Melissa eventually found work as a receptionist at a dental office. The pay wasn't great, but combined with Travis's support and some help from my parents, she was managing. My parents sold their condo and moved into a smaller apartment to reduce expenses. They'd made their bed, as the saying goes. As for me, I focused on healing, really healing, not just surviving. I kept going to therapy, working through not just the betrayal, but the lifetime of being second best in my parents' eyes. My therapist helped me see patterns I'd never noticed, ways I'd been conditioned to accept less than I deserved. I started saying no to things I didn't want to do. Started setting boundaries with people who took more than they gave. It felt selfish at first, but my therapist reminded me that self-care isn't selfish. It's necessary. Work continued to go well. 6 months after the court case, I was promoted to creative director, a position I'd been working toward for years. The raise was substantial. I moved to a nicer apartment this time, a 2-bedroom with a small balcony where I could grow herbs and flowers, small luxuries that made life feel full again. I even started dating cautiously. Nothing serious at first, just coffee dates and dinners, relearning how to trust. Then I met Daniel at a work conference. He was a consultant for one of our clients, funny and kind with no drama and no hidden agendas. We took things slow. I was upfront about my past, and he didn't run. 6 months in, we're still together, still taking it day by day. I'm not ready for marriage again. Maybe I never will be. But I'm open to possibilities in a way I wasn't before. About a year after the court case, I ran into my mother at Whole Foods. Literally bumped into her in the produce section. We both froze. She looked older, tired. Her hair had gone almost completely gray. "Glenda," she said softly. "Mom." We stood there among the organic apples and kale, two women who used to be close and now were strangers. She cleared her throat. "How are you?" "I'm well. You managing?" She hesitated. "I want to apologize for everything. Your father and I, we were wrong. We see that now." I nodded. "Okay. Is there any chance we could talk, really talk, maybe get coffee sometime?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say yes, wanted to believe we could fix this. But I'd learned something important over the past year. You don't owe people access to you just because they're family. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. "I don't think I'm ready for that, Mom." Her face fell, but she nodded. "I understand. Will you ever be ready?" "I don't know. Maybe. But not now." "Okay." She touched my arm lightly. "I really am sorry, if that matters." It does matter, but it doesn't change what happened. We said goodbye. I watched her walk away, hunched over her shopping cart, and I felt something I didn't expect: peace. Not happiness exactly, but an absence of pain. I didn't hate her. I didn't hate any of them anymore. I just didn't need them in my life. I finished my shopping and went home to the apartment I'd made into a sanctuary. Kate was coming over for dinner. Daniel was stopping by later. I had work I was excited about and friends who valued me. My life was full without the people who'd hurt me, and that was okay. More than okay. Looking back now, I realized that courtroom wasn't just about money or legal obligations. It was about standing up for myself, maybe for the first time in my life. It was about saying enough is enough. About refusing to be the person who always sacrifices for everyone else's comfort. They say time heals all wounds, but I think that's only partially true. Time gives you distance. It lets you see things more clearly, understand patterns you missed in the moment. But healing, that requires work. Active, intentional, often painful work. I spent months in therapy unpacking my family dynamics. Childhood memories I dismissed as normal took on new meaning. The birthday party where Melissa got a huge celebration and I got a cake from the grocery store. The Christmas when she got a car and I got a winter coat. The college graduations where mine was a quick lunch and hers was a weekend celebration. Little cuts that accumulated over years, teaching me my worth was less than hers. My therapist introduced me to the concept of setting boundaries. It sounds simple, But for someone who'd spent 32 years prioritizing everyone else's needs, it was revolutionary. I practiced saying no. No to extra work I didn't want. No to friends who only called when they needed something. No to guilt trips and obligations that didn't serve me. The first few months were hard. I felt selfish constantly. But slowly, I started to understand the difference between self-care and selfishness. Self-care is protecting your peace. Selfishness is protecting it at someone else's expense. What my family had asked of me, demanding I fund the child born from my betrayal, that was asking me to be selfless to the point of self-destruction. I learned to forgive, but on my terms. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't about letting people back into your life. It's about releasing the hold their actions have on you. I forgave Melissa for the affair. I forgave Travis for his betrayal. I forgave my parents for their favoritism and their cruelty in that courtroom. But forgiveness didn't mean I had to have a relationship with any of them. My career flourished in ways I hadn't expected. As creative director, I had autonomy and respect. I mentored younger designers, helped them avoid the pitfalls of undervaluing themselves. I was good at my job, and for the first time I let myself be proud of that without minimizing my achievements. Daniel and I grew closer. He met Kate and my other friends. We took a trip to Hawaii, spent a week doing nothing but reading on the beach and eating good food. He asked once about marriage, if I'd ever want that again. I told him honestly, maybe someday, but I needed to be sure. He understood. He always understood. I thought about Sophie sometimes, wondered what she looked like now, what kind of personality she was developing. I didn't hate her. How could I? She was an innocent child caught up in adult mistakes, but I didn't feel connected to her either. She was Melissa's daughter, Travis's daughter, but not my family. That might make me cold to some people, but it was my truth. Occasionally, I'd get texts from numbers I didn't recognize. My parents trying to reach out. I never responded. There was nothing left to say. They'd made their choice when they stood in that courtroom and tried to force me to pay for my sister's mistakes. They'd chosen Melissa then, just like they'd chosen her my entire life. I was done accepting second place in their hearts. Kate asked me once if I was happy. I thought about it carefully before answering. Happy felt like too simple a word for what I felt. I was content. I was peaceful. I was free in a way I'd never been before. I'd built a life on my own terms, surrounded by people who valued me doing work I loved. Was that happiness? Maybe. Or maybe it was something better. The second anniversary of the court date came and went without fanfare. I didn't even realize it until Kate mentioned it. 2 years since I'd stood up in that courtroom and refused to be a victim anymore. 2 years of building a life I actually wanted, instead of the one I thought I should have. I looked around my apartment that evening, plants thriving on the windowsills, art on the walls that I'd chosen because I loved it, a bookshelf full of novels I'd actually read, a kitchen where I cooked meals for myself and friends. It was small, but it was mine. Every piece of it reflected who I was, not who someone else needed me to be. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Glenda. It was my father's voice, older and more tentative than I remembered. Please don't hang up. I should have. But curiosity kept me on the line. What do you want, Dad? I want to apologize. Really apologize, not like before. Your mother and I, we've been doing a lot of thinking. We were wrong about everything. The way we treated you growing up, the way we handled the situation with Melissa and Travis, the lawsuit. He paused. We lost a daughter because we were too stubborn to see what we were doing. You didn't lose me, I said quietly. You chose Melissa. You've always chosen Melissa. I just finally stopped waiting for you to choose me too. I know, and I'm sorry. Is there any way we can fix this? I thought about all the years of second best, all the times I'd made myself smaller so Melissa could shine, the wedding where they'd barely smiled in photos, the promotions they dismissed as nice but not impressive, the love they'd given her freely while making me earn scraps of approval. I don't know if you can fix it, Dad. I don't know if I want you to. What if we tried? What if we really worked on being better? Maybe, I said, but not now. I'm finally okay and I can't risk that yet. I understand. His voice cracked. I hope someday you'll give us another chance. Maybe someday. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up and sat with the complicated feelings that conversation brought up. Part of me wanted to believe they'd changed. Part of me knew it didn't matter if they had. I'd changed. I'd become someone who didn't need their approval anymore. That night I cooked dinner for Daniel and Kate. We ate on my balcony watching the sun set over Portland's skyline. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter. These were my people. This was my family. Not the one I was born into, but the one I'd chosen. As I cleared the dishes later, Kate pulled me aside. You seem different lately. More at peace. I am, I realized. I really am. I'm proud of you. What you've built, who you've become. It takes strength to walk away from family. It takes more strength to stay sometimes, I said. I think I finally learned the difference between being strong and being a doormat. She hugged me. Well, for what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. I thought about that after everyone left. Had I made the right choice? Walking away from my family, refusing to support Sophie, maintaining my boundaries even when it meant being alone for a while. Society said family was everything that you should forgive and forget that blood was thicker than water. But the full saying is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose are stronger than the ones we're born into. I'd chosen to build a life with people who respected me, valued me, loved me without conditions. That was worth more than any biological connection. I stood by my window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Melissa was putting Sophie to bed. My parents were probably eating dinner in their small apartment. Travis was likely working late on another freelance project. They were all living their lives dealing with the consequences of their choices. And I was here in my apartment at peace with mine. That courtroom had been a turning point, but not the one anyone expected. It wasn't about winning a legal case. It was about winning my life back, about refusing to let other people's guilt and manipulation dictate my choices, about learning that you can love people from a distance, forgive them without letting them hurt you again. I'd lost a family, but I'd gained something infinitely more valuable myself. So here I am 3 years later. I'm 35 now, still living in Portland, still working as creative director. Daniel and I got engaged last month, a quiet proposal on a hiking trail in the gorge. We're planning a small wedding, just close friends. No family drama, no complicated dynamics. Just people who love and support us. I haven't spoken to my parents since that phone call from my father. Melissa sends me friend requests on social media occasionally, which I ignore. Travis, I never hear from, which is fine. They feel like characters from someone else's story now, people I used to know in another life. Sometimes people ask if I regret cutting ties with my family. The answer is complicated. I regret that it had to happen. I regret that they couldn't love me the way I needed to be loved. But I don't regret the choice I made to protect myself. Given the same circumstances, I'd make the same decision. I've learned so much about myself through this process. I learned I'm stronger than I thought. I learned my worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. I learned that walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you can do. Most importantly, I learned that you don't owe anyone your peace, not even family, especially not family who treat your pain as an inconvenience and your boundaries as a personal attack. The people who truly love you will respect your limits. They'll celebrate your strength, not punish you for it. My therapist told me once that healing isn't linear. Some days I feel completely over everything that happened. Other days something small will trigger a memory, and I'll feel that old pain. But it's getting easier. The good days outnumber the bad ones now. I think about the woman I was 3 years ago, sitting in that courtroom terrified but determined. I'm proud of her. She could have given in, could have paid the money to keep the peace, to make everyone else comfortable at the expense of her own dignity. But she didn't. She stood up and told the truth, even when it was hard, even when it meant losing everyone she'd thought was supposed to love her. That act of courage changed everything. It set me on a path toward actually living instead of just surviving, toward building a life based on what I wanted, not what everyone else expected of me. If you're reading this story, if you're going through something similar, I want you to know you're not selfish for protecting yourself. You're not cruel for setting boundaries. You're not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Family isn't about blood. It's about respect, support, and unconditional love. If the people in your life can't offer that, you have every right to walk away. It won't be easy. There will be guilt. There will be people who don't understand, who judge you for it. But on the other side of that pain is peace. Real, genuine peace. The kind that comes from knowing you stood up for yourself, that you valued your own well-being enough to fight for it. My life now is quieter than it used to be. Smaller in some ways. But it's mine. Every piece of it is authentic, chosen, earned. I wake up in the morning next to someone who loves me without conditions. I go to work where I'm valued and respected. I spend my free time with friends who would never ask me to compromise my dignity for their comfort. That courtroom was supposed to be about money, about legal obligations and family duty. But what it really was about was freedom. The freedom to say no, the freedom to choose myself, the freedom to walk away from toxicity even when it wore the mask of family. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe someday I'll be ready to have a conversation with my parents to see if real reconciliation is possible. Maybe I'll meet Sophie when she's older if she wants to know me. Or maybe I won't. Maybe my family will always be the people I've chosen, not the ones I was born to. Either way, I'm okay. More than okay. I'm free. And if you're facing a similar choice, wondering if you have the strength to stand up for yourself against the people who are supposed to love you most, I want you to know you do. You're stronger than you think. Your peace matters. Your dignity matters. You matter. Don't let anyone, not even family, convince you otherwise. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who didn't respect them? Have you been in a situation where standing up for yourself meant losing relationships? Drop a comment below and share your story. You never know who might need to hear it. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share this video with someone who might need the reminder that it's okay to choose yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you find the courage to tell yours. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, you don't owe anyone your peace, not even family.